I think it has been a wonderful round of presentations, and I think has been almost no contentious issue which has not been confronted. Now, one of the mainly most contentious issues today in terms of policy issues regarding the doctorate uh, uh, has been kind of pushed to the corner, except by Jean Chambas, who took it a very strong position about that, namely about institutional and program diversity and the issue of whether all doctorates are the same or not. I think that this is a very, very difficult one, mainly that in my own experience, we in the so-called global south are looking at the global north and seeing different kinds of examples. And of course, like everybody else, reading with a very peculiar lens what is going elsewhere. And in Europe, we see this kind of confrontation between this kind of equalization movement, which we in Latin America take it very much at heart, namely all universities are research universities, all research universities produce PhDs, all PhDs should be approximately the same and should be funded in similar ways, as against, the trend to focus strategically on fields, on institutions, and some programs, and make them more competitive globally. I have been looking in a comparative way East Asia, Latin America, because they are so different. Chinese and the Koreans have gone full ahead into what I would call concentrated policy. Doctorate programs are only for some universities, and the best doctorate programs have to be only a few, and the whole issue of world-class universities has, not being without contention, but certainly has gone all the way. In Latin America, we do exactly the reverse, which means we don't talk about that, it just happens. And it happens in very devious ways, and it's a very, very serious problem. But I felt a bit uncomfortable mainly with Jean Chambas' solution, saying, we definitely don't want first-class and second-class doctors. Yeah, nobody wants that. It just happens. The issue is, what do we do with that? And as if we want to take not just a political viewpoint, but more of a policy and academic or analytic viewpoint, that's very important. It's even very important at the core of our concern about equality, because we don't want, certainly, in Argentina we have some 100 universities. In Mexico, they have several hundred universities. All of them define themselves as doctorate universities and research universities. We know that there is absolutely no possibility of funding them all the way and funding all doctoral students the same way. You have to choose. And also this is very important in terms of relationships, because we definitely want help from the highest ranking, and ranking is a bad word, but so-called better placed universities to help us. And that's the way, we develop our fellowship policies, send them to the best places, but to get help in order to improve. So I was expecting that Sandra, on her accreditation lens, would say, accreditation is about minimum standards. Certainly we do need minimum standards. We don't want doctor programs that don't meet minimum standards, but we don't want all of them to be the same. I would like to hear more, maybe from Jean Chambas, but from the others, about really what's to be done, and mainly these kind of global concerns we have. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to pick up on two things that Sandra said. She suggested that there needed to be a content analysis of the structure of doctoral education in the various countries to provide a context for the analysis. And she also suggested that the group clarify and make explicit their objectives. I think it might be useful in the content analysis to also look at the objectives that the various countries or data sources had in collecting the data. And I think it would be very interesting to look at why certain data was collected and also why not. And we had some insights into that some sorts of data are illegal to collect in some countries. The reason I think that is important, I guess, is twofold. I think if you're going to get a good insight into why data was collected, you really have got to go back to the underlying policy objectives. But also, it seems to me that if one of the outcomes that the group may consider when they define their objectives would be a common set of data that would inform future comparisons, then you have to understand what the objectives of collecting data or not collecting data in the various cultural contexts are.
Just a quick point, with the concern of being a little, of asking perhaps too naive of a question here, but if the aim for this for this particular chapter, this particular piece is for developing policies aimed at addressing diversity in doctoral education, it strikes me that doctoral education is a nested phenomenon within a whole series of other systems that feed perhaps to an end of diversity in doctoral education. So I wonder that while a focus on policies to encourage or address diversity in doctoral education might be worthwhile in and of itself, I wonder how people in this workshop who can influence policy are considering the other systems within which this doctoral education phenomenon is nested, such as primary, secondary, undergraduate education, etc., that often feed the diversity in doctoral education.